When you think about iconic and popular villains in anime, you tend to think about Frieza, Madara, Aizen, or like a Doflamingo. These villains stand out not only because of their execution as characters, but the moments they brought to the story and the build that comes with them. Fast forward to the 2020s, and if we're talking like notable titles, primarily shonen titles, or even some newer seinen manga that's kind of popping, the villains haven't exactly been as big as a bright spot compared to the last 10 or 15 years ago. Why is that? Well, I can delve into that later into the video. Although there are a few pretty popular ones in the current landscape of manga, there is one that sits atop of all of them no matter how big of a fan of the series you are. Everyone knows about the King of Curses, Ryoma Sukuna. I will warn you now, this video does include manga spoilers because the gist of what will be said it kinda is for manga reasons. Now Sukuna in the anime mainly after season 2 is on everyone's radar if you are an anime only. Mainly because so far you know good and well Sukuna is a pure villain antagonist who will not be someone you cry for or feel sympathy for or someone who can help Yuji in a positive manner. He is a tyrannical man of pure destruction that has to be caged or everyone is screwed. In season 1 and the first couple of arcs for Sukuna, it's all basically an introduction of his personality, so he's still a blank canvas to say the least. Season 2, he gets to go on a full rampage against Jogo, the civilians, and Maharaga. I read Shibuya in the manga first before the anime came out, and I knew Sukuna's return was going to be a big trending moment for the community, but I don't think anybody expected the absolute spectacle that was Jogo and Maharaga that are both some of the best animations to drop ever. And arguably Sukuna coming out in Shibuya, I think that'll be a lot of people's favorite moment coming out of it. So much so that when the Maharaga vs Sukuna remastered edition was leaked, people reacted to it on YouTube and Twitter, showing love to the animators. And after season 2, Sukuna is now looked at as an entity that is a fan favorite and someone people can't wait to see and learn more about. So far, he's the only villain to get this type of adore from fans and the anime community as a whole. The closest actor would be Makima from Chainsaw Man. I can see in season 2 Makima getting put in those big villain categories by the masses. But by the time part 1 ended and it was a lot shorter, a lot of people kind of forgot about Makima. Of course, the manga fans didn't. Other than that, it's not really anyone else that kind of stands out. I think something like a Kagura Bachi could, but it's still a young series, so it takes time. Hell's Paradise's antagonists aren't exactly the strongest aspects of that story. I've only seen season 1 of Undead Unluck, so I can't comment too far, but I do have high hopes for it. As for Ranger Reject, I've only seen season 1. I have heard big things about the manga, so I might check it out. And I'm not all the way caught up on series like Children X or Dandadan, even though I do need to. But those villains haven't exactly been talked about all that much. Not to say that they're bad, but simply not showcased enough. I'm not counting Black Clover and MHA because those series are 10 years old and not new whatsoever. Plus, Shiggy kinda fell off for me, unfortunately. But let's take a look at Sukuna post season 2. Ever since the end of Shibuya, Sukuna's return was anticipated for a long time. So much so that a small panel of just his face would get people talking. The reason this is so effective for a main villain is that at this time, he didn't really have that much screen time. It's because Gege effectively builds around Sukuna with the other villains and of course Yuji. From Mahito, Kijaku, Urame, the natural disaster curses, they played a part in the aura and the legend of Sukuna. Of course these characters have their own role in character arcs, 2 of them being so good that some people actually wanted them to be a long-term main villain for the series until the end. Even some people picked him over Sukuna himself. When Sukuna comes out for those periodical times, it's all set up. From showing how strong he is, his mentality, his reaction to certain moments, sometimes alluding to his upbringing. Plus, to call a spade, this motherfucker is just the coldest thing in the show. It says a lot when Mahito, a one-touch, one-kill psychopath curse, and Kenjaku, a scientist who will do anything to see his results impact the world of JJK, they both revere and fear Sukuna from just his presence alone. As for the manga, Sukuna, who doesn't make a real in-person appearance till chapter 199, but it only lasts about 3 panels, if that. And it was still within Yuji's subconscious. He makes his real return in chapter 212. Now, I can't remember the last time a villain made a return and did a plot twist or just an action in a chapter where it felt like everyone was reading JJK at the same time and reacting to it. We got Enchained for the first time, another story element that was put in very early in the story and was basically never spoken about again due to the binding vow. simply because the foreshadowing was effective enough for a character like Sukuna. When he took Megami's body over, everyone knew we were going to get another Sukuna Shibuya rampage, but a little bit different. And overall stronger because he had the 10 shadows in his possession, which added another layer of intrigue because of how different Sukuna was to fight with Megami's body in comparison to Yuji's. A twist some saw coming and most didn't. This also effectively put Sukuna in position to be the final antagonist he was meant to be, and Gege can now execute the rest of Sukuna's character effectively without limitations. With Maki getting stronger, Yuta, of course Akari, Yuji getting stronger, he has ways to let Sukuna attack them while not destroying them too easily. I think the one time Sukuna slightly cooled down was with the Yorozu fight. Not the most well received fight, mainly because Yorozu's personality ain't for everybody. It might have been too much and too wacky at the moment when everyone feels like it got so serious and ominous as to what can happen next. But the way Sukuna used Megami's 10 shadows was the best part of this first little run he has. Showing the giant gap in power when everyone was as strong as Sukuna uses it compared to a developing Megami shows just how powerful Megami really is, or at least, could have been in the future. With Kaiju Sayo's new way revealing a couple new shadows that shows the versatility of the technique, and comfortably beating Yorozu, who was actually very strong despite how she acts, without a domain or Fuga. He took care of business. With Maharaga under his control, you can see how good Maharaga can be in just a defensive effect, rendering Yorozu's domain useless after spawning the wheel over his head and taking a few hits, adapting to the domain's short hit like it was nothing. During the fight, we got more Sukuna backstory and a look at his past self with Urame. As far as the backstories go, Sukuna doesn't really have one. It's almost like a puzzle you have to put together, which is out of the norm for a popular villain. You look at all the iconic villains through anime history, and even someone like Shigaraki, who was infamous for his backstory. The past of a villain is almost everything, sometimes better than what's going on in their current story. This is simply a factor of how Gege writes. It's more show and tell when it comes to these characters. Sukuna being the best example, as his character and backstory is revealed mainly through when he talks and when he fights. When he fought Yorozu, he talked about how losing is the equivalent to death, how he knows about love and doesn't need to learn it. With Kashimo is a lesson in what it means to be the strongest, and that love isn't really necessary in order to get that title. That you need to throw any emotion you have away when you are in battle, and if you want to reach the peak, you need to go beyond every limitation that you could think of. The reason he enjoyed the Gojo fight so much is because he felt he met his match not only in power but in philosophy. A man who is the strongest but hates the aspect of being lonely with no one next to him who can understand what goes through his head, who will go to certain lengths to win a fight, is exactly what Sukuna wants. The other being the fighting with Jogo, of course, where Sukuna gives Jogo advice at literally the worst possible time, saying he should have burnt everything in front of him because he could have, but he lacked the confidence and had a moral goal that was stopping him from doing so. Most mangaka can't do that or just don't want to risk doing something like that. Part of this is just the way the manga industry is now. You can tell that they're focusing on grabbing attentions quicker. If you ever read a new manga and it feels like damn, this is going by pretty fast, it's done by design. They're looking at the attention span dropping, and you're just pretty much saying, hey, you got to grab these people within 7 chapters, because this isn't the old days where you can drag things out for 10, 20 chapters and then really delve into things, because people just aren't looking at waiting that much time for a manga, unfortunately. Gege at a mangaka audition, I forgot the name, but basically some young mangaka in Japan had an event they can go to possibly get into the Jump magazine, I believe. Long story short, he basically told them, don't restrict yourself to slowing your story down for a backstory or trying to characterize someone through a backstory. Not to say never to use them, but you can do a lot with some characters by not fully explaining their past or who they are with the backstory, and instead being able to characterize your whole cast while the story is still progressing in the middle of things, plots, etc. I think some stories could have that approach because it feels like you can just kill 2 birds with 1 stone doing so. Currently in the manga with full form Sukuna, it's arguably been some of his best stuff as a character in the series, with his second fight against Maki and how he reacted to fighting a heavily restriction user, the fight with Yuta and Yuji, and of course earlier Higuruma. They all have big moments against them and they aren't wasted. Right now there's people even wondering if Sukuna is even gonna lose, which is how you should feel. Very rarely is there a final villain where you're not fully sure how he's gonna be killed. But the added stress of other characters dying or being brutally injured adds more to what Sukuna is. Ask yourself, would you be as enamored with Sukuna if he just beat up Kashimo and didn't kill him? Or if Higuruma just took a ton of damage, never showed up again until like the end of the series? They already completed their character arcs. What value do you have if he sticks around? If anything, them dying benefits Sukuna and it benefits the story. Now obviously you can have your own opinions on how they go down, but them dying serves more than them being alive. And you can make a really good argument that as a sorcerer or just fighters, Sukuna brought the best out of everyone around him, which is really what you want your main antagonist to be able to do. I believe a lot of anime fans, old and new, aren't used to seeing a villain be this successful in his plans and be this impactful, while the main character still has a chance to realistically win. He's the best mix of familiarity and unique for this era of manga and anime. He's without a doubt the most iconic villain of the modern age. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.